Ano ai ke aloha ia kako pakahia pau. Mai ka pi'i ano ka la i ka hiki na a hiki loa i ka napa ono ka la I ke komohana. Lelina pumehana ia kako pakahia pau. I want to welcome everybody to our second event in this type of forum. Mahalo nui for tuning in. This Talk Story event is being sponsored by Kanaio Kana and Kaleo o na ōpio, otherwise known as Kono. Last month, we sat down with our ōpio and we had the opportunity to talk stories with Mr. Ernie Lau, who was the head of the Honolulu Board of Water Supplies. Now, he provided a lot of information and mana'o regarding the Kapūkaki water situation. And if you guys did not get a chance to view that, I invite you to go to Kanaio Kana's Facebook page and look for that video because it was an amazing, amazing presentation and our ōpio asked some great questions. Now, tonight, we're going to continue our discussion on this topic by bringing in a policymaker who has been leading the fight at the county level for addressing this dire situation. Mahalo, everyone. My name is Kaipo Leopoldino, and I'm going to be your moderator for tonight. But really, we're here to listen to council member Waters as well as our ōpio from various schools. Now, Council Chair Tommy Waters is a member of the Honolulu City Council representing District 4, East Honolulu. He previously served as a member of the Hawaii State House of Representatives and is a graduate of the Kamehameha schools. In response to the Kapūkaki water crisis, Councilmember Waters co-introduced Bill 48, which would ban underground fuel tanks on Oahu. Now, this was the first piece of legislature that was introduced to address the situation. So without any further ado, aloha Council Member Tommy Waters. How are you doing? Pehea oi.
Oh, Mike, I'm doing great. And aloha to you and all of the ōpio. And thank you so very much for inviting me to speak on your show. I really, really appreciate it and enjoy working with young folks and getting them energized and involved in the process. So thank you. Shall I just start?
Yeah. No scare them, go get them. Let's dive into it.
No scare them, go get them. I like that. So, our water is like everything. Water is life, right? And it shouldn't just be a Hawaiian thing. It's an everybody thing. But I think as a native Hawaiian, we understand living on an island, you cannot survive without Vai. It's as simple as that. You cannot live on an island unless you have water. You can't live anywhere unless you have water, right? So think about this, folks. This is the water that we drink. This is the water that we bathe in. This is the water that we wash our clothes in, we wash our dishes in. Can you imagine what it would be like without water? Well, we at the council, we saw these spills, and we had been paying attention to this over the last couple of years. And when we looked into it and found out that the Department of Health didn't do anything for like 16 years, right? The EPA is in charge, Environmental Protection Agency is in charge of inspecting these tanks. They delegated that power to the Department of Health 16 years ago. Not until the Sierra Club sued the Department of Health and said, hey, you guys aren't doing your fiduciary duty and inspecting these tanks. And we knew about at least 3 prior spills. And finally, Esther Kia'aina, who represents Waimanalo and Kane'ohe and Kahalu, actually, she and I got together and we thought we need to do something about this, and we need to do something right away. Because this is before the legislature even started. This was last year. And we reached out to the Navy, and I've been asking for a tour of the facility for months now, and I've been turned down. Right? I wanted to find out for myself and look for myself and get an explanation for myself on how and why these tanks are so important and willing to risk our drinking water. But when it actually contaminated our drinking water, I thought, oh, you know what, the city has to do something about this. And we introduced Bill 48 that basically said that if you're gonna underground fuel of over 100,000 gallons, which by the way, there's only one entity that does that, the Navy. We didn't want to impact Costco, who does have underground fuel tanks as well. That's how they're able to provide such cheap gas to local residents. But we just made it really pertaining to them. And we said that before you can do this, you have to demonstrate to us how you're going to prove that it's safe. And if you notice on the bill, I left that blank. Like when I say us, I meant the city. Yeah, because at that time, I felt that the state really was not doing their fiduciary duty. So one of the ideas, I thought we have Ernie Lau. You guys heard from Ernie Lau. I mean, I love Ernie Lau, right? He's the protector of the Vai, right? I mean, when someone like Ernie starts to cry at these public hearings and public statements, and he came and testified before the full council on this in December, and he started to cry. And oh my gosh, right? That means this is, I mean, we knew it was serious, but when a man like Ernie is tearing up, like we knew we got the right guy fighting for us. Anyway, I'd like to put him there as the person who has to approve the permit, because that's basically what we're saying, that you have to come to the city in addition to the state to get a permit. But get this, guys, this is the real troubling part, that people are saying that we're preempted from doing this. Preempted, that's a legal term that means that the city has no jurisdiction to do it because the state has the jurisdiction and not us. And the lawyers, there was a bunch of legal memorandums today that said that we didn't have the authority to do it. But, you know, I was able to, and my staff who's watching today was able to debunk these arguments, working with the Sierra Club actually to say, no, we're not preempted. We're just another added layer of security to make sure. And really the whole point, folks, if I can be completely honest with you folks, there's no way that they can demonstrate that it's safe. And therefore we would deny those permits. Yeah, that's really my goal. We deny the permits because you cannot demonstrate that a 60-plus-year-old tank is safe. You know, a year ago, we had the Navy actually come to testify to us, and I asked them a lot of questions to describe what these tanks are like. Of course, these tanks were built in a hurry, right? It was during World War II. They were built like, it was amazing how fast they built these 20 tanks. By the way, there's 20 of them, and each of them can hold 12.5 million gallons of fuel, right? But these are cement tanks lined with a 1/4-inch steel. Yeah. You guys know about the Aloha Stadium, right? That's made out of steel that's rusting. I mean, it just seems like such common sense, right? That steel over the course of 60, 70, 80 years, you know it's rusted, and the water will get between the cement and the steel, and it's just not safe, right? I mean, it's laughable, right, that the Navy is saying that it's safe, because it's not. So when the Navy came to testify, I asked them, oh, terrific, the Navy found a cure for rust, right? Of course not. It's not safe, and they shouldn't do it. So we had a full council, and it was, you know, I invited the EPA, they didn't show up. I invited the Department of Health, they didn't show up. I invited Ernie Lau, and Ernie Lau showed up and explained to us. And you know what he told us? If you think about the aquifer like a cup, and the Navy put a straw into one end of the cup, right? And they're drinking from that end of the straw, and that's their aquifer that was providing water to the military housing. And then the Halava shaft is the one that the Board of Water supply. That's the straw. that actually feeds everyone from Moanalua all the way to Hawaii Kai, like 77% of our drinking water on Oahu, right? It's coming from the same cup. So when the fuel leaked through their straw for the city to be pumping water out of our well, we had to shut it down because we couldn't extract water from that well, because he testified, this is the most upsetting thing, is that he said, once you get that fuel into the transmission lines, these are the lines that go from the aquifer to your house. He says you can never get it out. You can never get it out, no matter how much you flush it. It's like when you eat salad and you try to rinse your salad bowl. You cannot get the oil off of your bowl unless you use fuel. And I like to speak in real general terms so that the public can understand how serious this is, right? That's why they have to shut down the Halava well. And he says, no matter how much the Navy flushes their transmission lines, it's not gonna work. And so they shut down the Halava shaft, right? And get this, this is even more upsetting, that they may have to dig new wells. And guess who's gonna have to pay for that? Us, right? The Navy's making no promises that they're gonna pay for that. And by the way, we shouldn't ever, ever, ever even get to that point, right? Why don't they understand? Why don't they take our thoughts and our feelings seriously, right? I mean, this is like common sense in my mind. And it's like Russian roulette. They have their own study, and I wish I had it in front of me that I could share with you folks. The Navy's own study said that another spill is imminent. Imminent. That means it's gonna happen, right? So we had a full council hearing, and it was very, very emotional, actually. Very emotional, where we were really upset. Councilmember Cordero started to cry. You know, I almost teared up myself when two or more council members started to get upset. And really, it is something that it touches you right here, right? When you're talking about our water. We also passed a resolution that we sent to President Biden, basically saying that this is important to the people of Hawaii. And by the way, other jurisdictions got their fuel tanks moved because we're not alone here in Hawaii. And why can't we do that? You know, how about the Navy being good stewards and a good friend to us, right? We're allowing them to stay here using our resources, at least Malamara resource, right? I mean, that's really the Hawaiian perspective, but it, you know, just the observation. The Hawaiian perspective is a very, very common sense perspective, right? Protect the water, protect your fisheries, protect your food, protect your aina, right? Like Hawaiians had it down. We had over 1 million people prior to Western contact living here, thriving, right? Because they just used common sense. Malama, the aina, and the water, take care, right? What's the word for rich, being rich in Hawaiian? Vai, right? I mean, if you had plenty of water, you're rich, you know? Just coming from that perspective, to me, that's just so important. I know Jacob mentioned earlier that some of the other things we're working on. I'm happy to open it up for questions. I'm really, really excited to talk story with you folks. But another big deal of mine is beach access, right? Getting to the ocean. You know, in my district, this person in Portlock put up a gate, and he just claimed the beach access for himself. And in Portlock, there's not too much beach there left, there's maybe there's 26 lanes that get to the ocean. And the one with sand, he put a gate, right? And I thought, you know what? The city council have been fighting this for years. And finally, I said, enough is enough. And we asked the administration to condemn that property. We were working with Kamehameha Schools because it used to be Kamehameha Schools land. And they turned it over to the private landowners with the promise that they would keep it open for public use. And then this person went and put up a gate, and if you look at it island wide, there's gates all over the place. And I think working together and working with your area council members, let's try to get these gates taken down. And again, the ocean is a very, very, very important place for us Hawaiians, and actually for all of us living in Hawaii, right? That's why we live here, Although I'll share with you, I used to paddle canoe, did Molokai Channel like 12 times, and I used to surf, but since I got this job, I don't surf or paddle anymore. My New Year's resolution was to get in the water, and I took my surfboard from under my house and I put them in my backyard. And guess what? Now it's back under my house because I didn't want anybody to steal it because I wasn't using it. But, I just want to illustrate the point, though, that the ocean, man, it's healing for us, right? It really is, man. You got a stressful day, you jump in the water. Yeah. That's all the more reason why we have to maintain access to the ocean, but also keeping our oceans clean, right? Remember and back to Red Hill, right? They were flushing the water. And what were they doing with that dirty water? They were sticking it right back into our streams that goes into our ocean. How pilau is that? Yeah. I mean, again, common sense. Why are you going to do that to us? Was my question that we asked. Why? I get it. The answer is national security, and Hawaii is a pivotal spot in the Pacific. But really, what's there going to be to defend if nobody can live here because we don't have drinking water? The water table on Kaho'olawe is broken because of bombs. Like literally, the water table is broken. So that kind of tells you what mindset they're coming from. Yeah. Like what is all important to them is not all important to us who have to live here and want to live here and thrive here. We want our kids to live here and have clean drinking water. So that's kind of where we're coming from on the city council side, and why we initiated Bill 48 and why we wrote President Biden a letter. By the way, we haven't gotten a response yet. I'm kind of hoping and waiting that he actually writes me and Esther Kia'aina back. Esther Kia'aina, she used to work in Washington, D.C., and she knows the system quite well. And I'm very hopeful that it actually gets to the president's desk. I was just reading an article here in Spectrum magazine, or online magazine, that apparently the president does know about it. So I'm very hopeful that he actually does something about it. I was happy to hear that Brian Schatz got $100 million to start remediating and planning for the building of tanks that are not over our aquifer, which is a huge step in the right direction. But we need to do more. We need to be vigilant. We can't just let this go. That's why the fact that you folks are vocal about it and involved and inquisitive, I think is wonderful, wonderful. And we got to keep fighting, man. Keep fighting, because if we let it go and we're not paying attention and we're not watching what the Navy is doing, they're not going to do the right thing. But that's my speech to you folks. And I'm here and want to engage and listen to you folks and talk about Red Hill and any other subject that you want to talk about.
Mahalo nui, Chair. I just want to briefly introduce these fine ōpio that we have here. Since you opened up the floor for them to start asking questions. They come from different parts of the island, and we also have someone tuning in from Hilo as well. So the first one is a veteran of our ōpio panel. He hails from Halau Kumana, and he is Hema. Aloha e Hema. From Waianae High School, we have Ifit. Aloha e Ifit. From Halau Kumana as well, we have Lillian. Aloha e Lillian. And from formerly of the Kamehameha schools, Kea'au, she's now at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. We have Kaila. Aloha e Kaila.
Aloha Kaila.
And then from the hills of Kalaipo Haku, we have Maui. Aloha e Maui from St. Louis schools.
Oh, how's it?
So in ōpio, the floor is yours. Chair Waters did open it up, so go ahead and ask your questions. Go for it, Hema.
Yeah.
I guess it was more like kind of an observation. I think it's just kind of a, because I remember looking at images of Pu'uloa or Pearl Harbor, and it's already kind of a messed up bay. Seeing images after their dumping of the water in Halawa Valley, and images of it before, what it looked like before. And even though that water is kind of murky green and whatnot, it was just so sad to see. You could see strands of this orange weird color in the water floating all around. Just discolorations all over, and you already know it's not good, and it already isn't good. And Pu'uloa, that bay used to be, it was like the pearl, right? It was the pearl of the sea. And we used to have dozens and dozens of fish ponds in that area. And some are still, you can still look at them, you can still visit them. But it's kind of such a sad sight to see, to watch the bay that's already been damaged. You can't eat any fish from there. You can't swim in that water. You can't even think about, let's go have a beach day. No, you're gonna get sick. And so I think it's even sadder to see it get sicker and sicker. And I think it kind of reflects the attitudes the Navy has. And I think, people there can be amazing people. And other times I think that the system over there as well can just be such a grinder of materials and of spirits when it comes to that administration, especially because it switches out so often. And I think it removes them from the people that they're here to protect. And I understand it's more of a national rather than like a police kind of attitude, but it's still very disparaging to watch such a powerful force come in here with so little care. And I think even the inception of the tanks themselves was insane from the beginning. And I think I'd just like to ask, like, aside from this, is there any other ideas or things that you might have in order or succession towards this bill that concerns military operations in Hawaii? Because I know that this fuel storage tank is the largest and is insane, but there's other things that are also polluting the waters in the ocean that would go a long way if we could remedy those.
Well, thank you, Hema. I actually enjoyed your observations, and you're absolutely right. And one of the things that I just want to highlight what you just said was that these commanders that are in charge, they're typically here for a short amount of time. And I like to believe in the goodness of everyone, right? And giving people the benefit of the doubt. And these commanders, they just kick the can down the road because they know that they're not going to be here for any long length of time, and they're not going to raise their families here either, right? And they gotta know in their heart of hearts that this is dangerous and that we can't do it. But they're here for 2 years sometimes, and they move on to a different deployment or a different assignment, and they just, okay, it's the next guy's job, and it's the next guy's job. And I would love to just see one of them stop and say, no, the buck stops here. This is a problem, and we need to solve it. And then go advocate for that at the Pentagon, and go advocate for that at the White House, and go advocate for that over in Congress. Because it's going to be expensive. We know that, right? It's going to be expensive. But when you're dealing with the health and safety of our people, I mean, the money shouldn't be an object here. right? I mean, yeah. But you know, it's interesting. This was in Forbes magazine, and I encourage you folks to go read the article. And it was really illuminating because the Navy and the military basically have numerous land leases with the state. And you know, my staff is on the call, and I think we're gonna have to look up to see if the military is leasing any property from the city. But they certainly have leases with the state, and they're up, according to Forbes magazine, which is a reputable magazine. But they're saying some of these leases are up in 7 years, right? We should hold their feet to the fire and say, you know, we're going to revoke these leases or not renew them unless you take care of business and defuel those tanks. Don't contest it. Right now, they're going to contest it in court. And by the way, I believe they need to go to state court. And I can't really see any state judges siding with the Navy on this. And if they do, you know, we all got to remember that. And when the judge is up for retention, we go testify against this judge, folks. I mean, it really is the power of the people, you know, and even hold our state counterparts feet to the fire. By the way, every state senator, every state representative, our governor, lieutenant governor, 4 people on the city council were all up for re-elections. That was the perfect time. Perfect time. You see one candidate sign waving on the side of the road, pull over your car, go sign wave them for a little while, but when they're pow, that's the time you go ask them, right? They're gonna be friendly to you because you just sign waved with them, but you guys are young and you care, and you look them in the eye and say, what you gonna do, you know, about these leases? I don't like them. If that's the case, I mean, if you like them, you like them. But you know, I'm just saying, like, really, that's the most vulnerable time for a politician, right? Is the election time, and that's the time you hit them, lock them in. Everybody got a cell phone. Go film your conversation with them. My fellow politicians are going to say, Tommy, what are you talking about? But no, seriously. I mean, everybody's up for re-election. It's a perfect time to hold their feet to the fire, you know. But thank you, Hema.
Mahalo, Chair Waters. You know, I just want to make correct a small mistake. I don't want to say it's small. Lillian, I made a mistake. Color my color book, color crayons. Lillian is actually from Hakipu'u Academy. So I just wanted to put that out there just so that everyone knows that we have representation from Hakipu'u Academy. Mahalo, Lillian, for being here. I'm going to give it right back to the ōpio, perhaps, Kyla.
Okay, aloha. Thank you, Councilman Water, for talking about that. I kind of wanted to piggyback off of Hema's observation and his question that he asked, and kind of talk about more specifically the contamination or the decontaminated water that's being pumped back into Halawa Stream. Because, you know, with the Halawa shaft already being contaminated with fuel and all those things that are already hurting a lot of people, what is the city and county doing to kind of ensure that either the Navy is held accountable for that decontaminated water, or what the city and county is doing to hold the state accountable for holding the Navy accountable for ensuring that this water really is decontaminated?
As I mentioned during my initial talk, that we're being told that the city doesn't have any jurisdiction over these issues. Yeah, I mean, the city attorneys were telling us that our bill is not pono, right? Because we have no jurisdiction and we're preempted. So I'm sad to say that other than the council ourselves, like fighting this in public and in open forums like this, the only other person from the city really who's fighting this is Ernie Lau, right? The Department of Permanent Planning hasn't weighed in on this. Department of Facility Maintenance has not weighed on this. And, you know, realistically, the city like doesn't have jurisdiction over these waterways. It is the state. But I just decided that, hey, even though they're saying this, we don't have jurisdiction, I'm going to assert it anyway. Who's going to sue us? And if they do sue us, go ahead. You know, it would probably only be the Department of Health, and that would be shame on them to actually sue us for trying to protect water, right? But very good question. And I'm sad to say that at this point, the city's not doing anything, right? And I just want to point out, right, the council, there's 3 branches of government, as you folks know, right? You got the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary, right? But we're the legislative branch. Like we can pass bills and make policy. And our bill hasn't passed yet. We still have to go through 3rd reading. But as Mr. Aki and Kumu Kaipo pointed out, that we're the first ones to do it. And I like to think that it kind of lit a fire under folks to do the right thing. But thank you, Kyla. And one of the things we want to do is try to look into other ways that the city can get involved in this and exert jurisdiction over these waterways and other parcels. Maui, you have a question for me? By the way, my dad went to St. Louis High School. I'm surprised why he put me in Kamehameha instead of St. Louis, by the way.
Well, yeah, definitely. I do have a question, and that's perfect
Cool.
because I would like to kind of piggyback off of what Kyla and Hema were both saying. But before that, I'd like to say mahalo. Mahalo for speaking tonight and for being here with us. Lohe ia ka leo na kupuna I kia po. So mahalo nui loa. But what I kind of wanted to ask or say first is that, you mentioned that the state is saying that city doesn't have jurisdiction. And, personally, I feel that we should all have jurisdiction over Vai. Vai isn't owned by one resource, but should be everyone's kuleana. And so you mentioned that there might be some ways that city will try to get involved in order to exert jurisdiction. But I guess my question would be how, or what do you see, or what do you think we can do as citizens and youth to kind of get involved as well, to take responsibility and kuleana for this Vai, to malamai for the generations to come?
No, thank you. Thank you for the great question. And really, it's about public participation. Yeah. Monitor, and part of it is for me to reach out to you folks. Now that I'm meeting you folks, I can keep you folks involved with what the city council is doing. But it's super easy. Check out our website at honolulucitycouncil.org. And you can see the various bills that we introduce, and it's super easy to testify, And I gotta tell you, when young people testify, people listen, right? We passed a single-use plastic ban in the city council my first year here. And really what made the difference was young people, right? And I hope you guys support that. It was back then, it was Bill 40. And this is plastic spoons, forks, knives, right? And styrofoam containers. And you go down the beach, that plastic fork is never, ever gonna go away, like ever. It'll only break down into smaller plastics. But the kupuna, and I'm just saying that, the older folks didn't understand that. But when young people came to the city council and said, this is our future that you're deciding, this is our kuleana, right? And then when the restaurants came out and did a rally on the grass outside of Honolulu Hale, and then the next day, young people organized and they did a rally outside. And every time people who were against the bill came up, young people came out. And I gotta tell you, I helped draft that bill, and it was dicey. I wasn't sure if it was gonna pass because I wasn't sure if we had the votes. But I feel 100% confident that we were able to sway council members to support this because of the young people who came in and testified. And it was pretty amazing, They filled the council chambers, and they had a mural that they made that they unfolded across the entire chambers with tens of thousands of signatures in support of this bill. And I did cry on that one. I gotta tell you, because there's young people who cared enough to participate, right? And the fact that you folks are here today says so much about your character, that you care, right? Most people are just too busy to participate, and I get it, right? Everybody's got their life, and it's hard to participate, but you gotta do it, man. You gotta do it. You gotta pay attention. Uh-oh, I'm on a timer. I'm gonna go turn on the timer. Sorry, hold on. We're trying to save electricity, so our lights are on a timer. I'm sorry. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, Maui.
Mahalo.
Okay, sorry, Komai. I went to the Lua and then I missed it, and then I was like, oh, who's going? And then I was sorry. Anyways.
That's okay. My lights went off. And,
so this past week I kind of went down a rabbit hole in doing like kind of extensive research to kind of wrap my brain around what's going on. And it all kind of started from HPR. It's kind of like the old folks radio station, but
I do listen to that every morning.
I was sitting in the car with my dad and we're listening, and then they're talking about Red Hill and what the Navy is doing. And my dad, he brought up a really good point that I wanted to kind of get your input on.
Sure.
There's a bunch of okay, sorry, let me explain a little bit better. I went on the EDA, which is the EPA, sorry, Environmental Protection Agency. I went on their website, and then me and my dad, we actually looked at the section 5.4 and we read the entire thing. It was very extensive. It was a lot, but what I realized is there's a lot of fluffing and there isn't an actual action plan. Like while we were reading it, I was kind of like confused and I was getting lost. And my question is like, what is the action plan that the city is trying to push upon the Navy? Because we're listening to a bunch of different conversations and I was having a bunch of different just input and, oh, you should ask this. So I'm asking you, what's the city trying to do to push them?
So when you say the city, right? I mean, I equate that basically to the administration, and then the city council. I can speak for the city council. I can't speak for the administration, the mayor and his cabinet and whatnot. But so I want to shut it down. Yeah, that's my goal. So I want to make it as hard as possible for them to operate. And that's why we introduced Bill 48. And I'll be completely open and honest with you and everybody watching that we want to make it impossible for them to get a permit. It's as simple as that. We want to make it impossible for them to get a permit. And that's what I think Bill 48 does. If they got to go to Ernie Lau to get a permit, a license or approval in any way, shape or form, Ernie's going to deny it, right? So that's what I want to do. I want to make the Navy go ask Ernie Lau. And that's what, again, so that's my plan, right? And that's what we do as legislators, right? We can write bills or resolutions or appropriate money. And it might be worthwhile, to perhaps appropriate some money to city lawyers to go sue them. The Sierra Club is suing them. And God bless Sierra Club, right? For taking the initiative and actually saying, hey, Department of Health, you're not doing your job, right? Hey, EPA, you're not doing your job. And finally, you probably heard on HPR radio that the EPA administrators down here are going to do her own inspection, which great. Finally, right? I mean, that's they like I started with, they delegated that responsibility to the Department of Health. To me, they never should have done that. It's the Environmental Protection Agency. They should never delegate their duty, you know? And then the state didn't do it. So I'm adding another layer of oversight through Bill 48.
Mahalo, Councilmember Waters. You brought up the leases expiring in 7 years, and being from Waianae-Moku, just thinking of my beloved Mokua, I was instantly reminded. So thank you for that, and thank you for being very candid all throughout tonight. And I'm going to get a little bit more abstract here. You've said, we're allowing the Navy to stay here a little bit earlier, and you've also said, if we don't stay vigilant, we can't trust that the Navy will do the right thing. And now you're saying you don't want to allow them to be able to operate Red Hill, and I mean, I'm fully in support of that, and I just wanted to know, why are we allowing the Navy to stay in Hawaii if they don't treat our resources correctly, or what is their place in our land?
That's a heavy question. And people who were here before us made those decisions that we are now living with, right? And so I can only speculate what they're thinking. Apparently they do contribute to our economy, indirectly, of course, but they do. And for national security, right? That I guess Hawaii was invaded before. I mean, but well, maybe I shouldn't go there. Yeah, we can only speculate, and you folks, I think, are on the same page. You can imagine why they're allowed to stay here. What I want to find out is who has control over these leases, these long-term leases. Is that DLNR? Right? It's got to be. Does the legislature have any say over that? They surely do, in my opinion. Right? They could pass laws to prohibit the renewal of these leases if they wanted to, and then have them justify what they're doing here. And why these leases are important to them, to us, and for national security, right? And I get the national security argument, but you lose a lot of credibility when you want to put millions of acres of fuel on top of our drinking water, right? I mean, how can we trust anything else that you tell us if you are going to fight us on that? That's completely troubling to me. And I know I didn't answer your question directly, brother. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
But your guess, I mean, and it's not really a guess, right? I mean, but maybe I just don't want to answer that question. Sorry. I wonder if the Navy's watching us today. I'm kidding.
I think so. Judging from like what I've read and what I've heard, especially when it comes to their deflections, the Navy at least, a lot of it is like it's like namu namu, just gibberish just all over. It's what it fills the ears so that you don't hear anything else. It's kind of like when you read bills that have 3 paragraphs for one section, and then you kind of get lost in the sauce and like, what's going on? And I think that also kind of applied to a bill that was written previously, 399, I believe. Don't quote me, I believe. And it was introduced a few years ago, to my recollection, or maybe just a year ago. COVID's weird. But it had to do with the renewal of leases. I think it has to do with the renewal leases of military as well. And I believe the stipulation was that they need to prove that they're going to improve the place with some kind of way to the leasee. I think that was the state. Because I do understand that they operate on state lands and technically have to pay a 20% share, but that's down another rabbit hole. And I also understand that there's some people in the legislature that are trying to either repeal it, I'm not exactly sure how it works, or put up another bill that would go against it and switch out the values. And I just wanted to call attention to that because I understand that, you know, one of your gripes is trying to understand what you can do with those leases. And I also know that that bill specifically was made so that, but we could understand that it was partially made for the purpose of renewing leases on lands that were going to expire, which was, I believe, was a Pauaku law and other lands that were integral to military training in the islands. And I just wanted to get your opinion. I mean, you may not have read the bill, but just your opinion on like whether or not you would support or oppose a bill that would be extending those leases. I assume we would be opposed.
Yeah, I think you got to take every piece of property one by one. For example, the district that I represent in East Honolulu runs from Hoikai to Ala Moana Beach Park. And within that area, we have the Halekulani, right? And that beach, not the Halekulani. I'm drawing a blank. You know the military hotel right in Waikiki?
Lekoa.
Halekoa, not Halekulani, Halekoa. So in my mind, how does that relate to national security? Yeah, because they said that they have these properties because they're protecting America in the United States. But that's a hotel, right? I mean, it doesn't pass the common sense test, you know? But at the same time, I actually do recognize that we are in a strategic place in the world. You know, even though we're small, it's extremely strategic. You know, when we see Kim Jong-un from Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles over Japan that actually could reach Hawaii, that's terrifying to me. So I recognize that as well. And at this point, I'm not willing to say, hey, Navy, get out of here. Because I do actually recognize some of the good that they do. But again, when it comes back down to our water, like I really call into question their judgment, you know? You know, it brings back to Kaho'olawe when a group of young Hawaiians actually started the protest and they were able to get them out, which was amazing. Same thing could happen, I guess, if people in Hawaii, and it could happen because of this Red Hill thing, right? Where people, so I'm walking door to door. I enjoy doing that. And I probably knocked on 1,000 doors in the last 3 weeks. And I got to tell you, the folks who actually had time to talk to me, they wanted to talk about Red Hill. So there's a groundswell of support for defueling these tanks. And when the Navy fights us on that, I think there's going to be a groundswell of support against them even being here. Right. And I don't know for sure. Right. But that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting from folks when I talk to them. But yeah, thank you. And by the way, you know, when you read a bill, you got to go line by line, right? And take your time, because I mean, here's the hardest part about legislation, and Jacob Aki could tell you this. The hardest part about legislation is to make sure it achieves what you want it to achieve, because oftentimes there's unintended results and unintended consequences of these bills. And really, that's the skill in writing and passing legislation, because you may want to achieve A, but B, C, and D happen. That's why you got to read every line carefully. And that's why I have a whole staff of 5 people who read every bill with me, and we sit down and discuss it, because we don't want, you know, the opposite to happen. So you're not alone, Hema, on that one. Even we in the business have a hard time sometimes. You got to take it real slow, because one paragraph modifies another, which then impacts this one. Then there's an exception to section A, right? And it's difficult. Right now we're dealing with short-term rentals, by the way, which is another really, really controversial issue, but it's a complicated bill. I'm just bringing it up because that's what's kind of on our desk right now, along with Red Hill. But super complicated legislation. And Jacob would tell you, you know, the legislature took it up a couple of times and they punted it to the counties because they don't want to deal with it. But we're going to deal with it, and we're going to deal with it this year. I'm curious, how do you guys feel about short-term rentals? Oh, sorry, Kyla, go ahead.
No, you're good. But thank you for bringing up kind of the rentals and the leases, because I'm gonna again piggyback off of Hema. So Hema, thank you for bringing up leases again. I believe the bill you were talking about, Hema, was HB 499, the one on public leases, that just went across the state House of Representatives, and it was a huge bill that got a lot of responsiveness from the community, especially the Hawaiian community. So I'm going to piggyback off that a little bit, because there's not a lot of procedures for returning land or renewing land, even with stipulations that have concerns over environmental protection. So in cases like PTA, so Pohakuloa, or even Makua Valley, that is a big one that's coming up a lot, is the returning of Makua Valley from military to state. So what are some procedures, even at just the city council, county level, that you would like to see for when those leases either get returned to state land or renewed, and what kind of stipulations would you as a council member like to see?
You know, one of the things I do want to look to see if the city actually leases any lands to the military. You know, off the top of my head, I don't think we do. But what we can do on the city council level is draft and pass a resolution encouraging the state to do whatever it is that we want to talk about. If it's Makua, we could encourage the state to take back that lease, right? Or encourage the state to be better landlords, to look out for the people of the state of Hawaii. But unfortunate to say that the city really doesn't have that power, jurisdiction, or ability to do it. But you guys are inspiring me perhaps to write more resolutions, encouraging them, even encouraging the Navy to do X, Y, and Z, or encouraging the Marine Corps to do that. Yeah, but that's not really within our wheelhouse to have actual control over those leases.
Okay, so I think it's kind of coincidental that you guys brought up Makua and Koho'olawe, because that's one of the main questions I wanted to, well, not a question per se, I wanted your opinion. So we have so many examples. If we look back in history, about the military not being a good guest to Hawaii. And like, to name a few, obviously Makua and Koho'olave, you know. So like, in your opinion, would you say that they have been, I don't want to, sorry, I'm going to choose my words very carefully. Do you think that they have regard over what actually happens to Hawaii and the people here?
Based on how they're acting with Red Hill, I would say no. Like, why are they contesting this? Right? I mean, everybody here doesn't want fuel over our aquifers, and it's just money to move the tanks, right? Go spend the money. Plus, you'll create jobs building new tanks. You know, if they really cared. I'm curious if it'll actually take an act of Congress to get it done, or can the president with his pen get it done through executive order? I mean, it really does bring into question their character and whether or not we can trust them. You know, that's coming just from me personally, right? Like, it's hard to trust them when they want to contest this emergency order. And by the way, how many other spills have happened that we don't know about? You know, that they never reported. And really, it comes back to more inspections as well, right? The Department of Health needs to be able to get in there. And I think Ernie Lau may have told you folks this, but he certainly told the city council that they're not forthcoming with information to us. And again, it comes back to trust, right? And being transparent and talking about the problem. Yeah. You know, we know the tanks have leaked in the past, but apparently on this one, it was the transmission lines that run the fuel from the tank to Pearl Harbor, which now tells me, you know, both are a problem, not just the tanks, but the transmission lines. But yeah, I guess it just comes back down to trust, you know. I don't know if you guys notice, I mean, this is kind of going off subject a little bit, but it just illustrates to them what they're doing. Have you guys noticed there are military helicopters flying really low over residential neighborhoods? I mean, it happens all the time. You know, we actually even passed the bill asking them and the tour helicopters to stop doing that. It's not safe. And they go over residential neighborhoods at like 11 o'clock at night. That's not, it's just not pono, right? I mean, it's just another illustration of how they don't care, right? The quiet enjoyment of our family time, right? I know I'm not answering your question, Lillian, but I'm just kind of expressing my thoughts and feelings and where my heart is on this.
Kalawai. But yeah, mahalo. I think I just wanted to share a little bit of Manawa, and this might be a question, it might not. But, you know, kind of going off of why don't we get the Navy kicked out and whatnot, and knowing, you know, national security, I think it's important to understand that VAI is also like important to us as well. You know, without VAI, we're killing ourselves, you know, and aside from protecting us from foreign nations and foreign countries, we need to look deep within ourselves and understand our kuleana. And I think that's like a huge theme that's kind of that we need to kind of push is kuleana, because if our Navy doesn't see that kuleana and they don't understand the kuleana, if our state doesn't understand that kuleana, then there really won't be any more pushing to it. And that's what we have to do as Kanaka, as the city and council and whatnot. And I think the real ask is how we make that known and how we can show the Navy and the state how we can show them the importance and the true vai of our waters. And that's not just a question to you, Chairman Waters, but to everybody. So mahalo.
No, I totally agree, Maui, and we got to be vigilant. So when this happened initially, there were protests and sign waving, and people really were outspoken about that. But we got to keep it up. We can't stop, right? And to the extent that each of you have council members or legislators, both in the House of Representatives and in the state Senate, you got to call them, write them, email them that this is important to you, so that we don't let it go and that we keep up the fight. We got to be vigilant about it, you know, and really not give up, because this is something worth fighting for, right? It really, really is. It's our water. And again, I talked about how people are oftentimes really busy and don't have time to participate in government. But I think we all have to make time for this issue, right? Amongst others, but especially this, yeah? And let them know, let our President of the United States know that we care and that this is important to us. So any way possible that you can, but again, influencing decision makers, I think, is probably a good place to start. And that's calling your senators, because there's a bunch of bills, and I'm sorry I can't recite them now, but there's a bunch of bills going through the legislature now that is dealing with Red Hill. I just want to encourage you folks to participate there at the legislature as well. And so Bill 48, that's the bill that Esther Kia Aina and I drafted. And then we just passed out of the Transportation, Sustainability, and Health Committee today. And it's going to go before the full council. This is where you guys have an opportunity to weigh in. Before the full, by the way, we have a calendar of when our committee hearings are and when our full council is. So it looks like our next full council is gonna be, looks like the 23rd of February. 23rd of February. So it's super easy. Jump on our website and it's really intuitive, and you click here and you type out how you feel, you know, and put your age on there. You know, like I said, man, the fact that you folks are young and you care and you're voicing your opinion. You know, a lot of the pundits say that you know, young people don't vote. Well, prove them wrong. You guys are active, you do care, and you do vote, right? And identify what district you live in, right? Like I said, every single senator, every single representative is up for re-election. You know, and this is a vulnerable time for them, and they're redistricted, so they got new districts, right? Perfect time to get involved and express your thoughts, feelings, and concerns. Like I said, tell them your age too, by the way, just because I think it's effective, you know, but it's really not an age thing, because I think it crosses, you know, the age barriers, and it doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. This is water, right? Yeah. I mean, enough said, really. I mean, I'm happy to talk more, don't get me wrong, but it's water. You know? Yeah.
I think just as we're closing out, so I like to mahalo you. You said some awesome mana'o and some beautiful stuff to share. And I think it's awesome to get the opinions, the mana'o, and the ike of a council member, right? Especially. And I think it's really awesome to hear that people in our systems have the iini for that, the desire for that, you know, that change, and has the taste for that kind of movement. And I think I talk to my dad a lot when it comes to this kind of stuff. And one thing he always says is, from a Hawaiian culture perspective, no matter what, it's all about the mo'okoho. And if you think about it, water is the original progenitor of everything. And so whether or not you come from Nanakuli or Waianae, or if you come from Kuli'o, you will always have to have come from water at some point. And I think it's that kind of boundary that we shouldn't cross, that we should always take care of our kupuna, and they are considered our kupuna as well. And I think it's important that we still remember that. You know, there's a mo'okoho to Kapūkaki, Red Hill. There's a mo'okoho to the I think it's Nahavi, or don't quote me on that. It's the waters of there. And I think it's very important to learn those kind of things, like Kapu'uloa and of Puakuloa, right? Of all those places. And I think it's incredibly important for especially a Hawaiian to understand that those are our ancestors as well. And I think for them to not be treated with respect, I think is the one of the greater I guess you could say faults that have been put against us. And so I'd like to mahalo you for putting through that bill. And I think it's admirable, your actions, and yeah, mahalo.
Oh, thank you. I do want to point out that there's actually myself, Andrea Tupola, Esther Kia'aina, and Heidi Tsuneyoshi is actually Hawaiian. There's 4 of us on the city council. And, you know, I think it's really important to get more Hawaiians elected to decision-making positions. Really, so you have that within your heart when you make decisions that affect Keiki and Kupuna. And that's one of the things that I try to do and impart on my colleagues, that if you channel every decision on how it's going to affect the Keiki or Kupuna, you cannot go wrong, right? You cannot go wrong. It's really, you know, a Hawaiian perspective too, but the Keiki represent our future, right? How is it going to affect our kids and our kids' kids in the future? Yeah, and then how does it affect our kupuna, our past? Yeah, because you want to still hold on to our traditions and what makes Hawaii special. You know, you don't want to get rid of that. You got to preserve it. You got to take care of it. You got to malama that. So, you know, and I'm trying to encourage my fellow council members to keep that in mind, right? Because oftentimes in politics, you get caught up in some little things here and there that are inconsequential when you think about it from a bigger picture. Like I said, our keiki and kupuna. And it's a good grounding mechanism too, right? But the fact that you folks are here today is so encouraging to me, I have to say. And you folks ask intelligent questions, and I love that. And I want to just encourage you folks to keep going, get involved, run for your neighborhood board, even run for the House of Representatives. You know, no shame. And I'll give you the real quick, the recipe and how I won. I used to represent initially Waimanalo and Kailua, and Waimanalo has a large Hawaiian homes parcel or population. So I would walk door to door and I'd knock on people's doors. And at first, it'd be, who's this holy guy at my door? The TV would be on, screen door open, nobody come to the door. But I was persistent. I went back 5 times. It got to the point where people were like, Tommy, stop coming to my house. I'll vote for you. Just don't come to my house anymore. But it is just being persistent and passionate and caring about Hawaii, I really believe. To the point where you would go to somebody's house and knock on their house and knock on their door. And that's what I did in the city council too. And I got a large district now. It's a little bit harder. And I got plenty hills, right? Wilhelmina Rise especially, right? That's one hard hill to walk, especially because each driveway is like on a football field. I got to go down the driveway to back up. They go 30 feet, then down another football field and up. Like I said, I paddled Molokai Channel numerous times. Walking Wilhelmina Rise was just as hard. But you know, if you believe in something and you want to make a difference, you can. You just got to do it, you guys. That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at each and every one of you folks, and I just love it. I love this. So thank you to Kumu Kaipo. Thank you, Jacob Aki, and all of you folks for putting this together, and Manuai Peters. But thank you guys. Thank you for just caring. And I'm so inspired by you. And that's why I'm doing my job, why I fight and keep doing this, really, because I'm inspired by folks like you who care, right? You care. And clearly your parents care too, right? Because each one of you kind of talked about your family, and I love that. By the way, I want to share something about myself. So there's six. I have 5 siblings. There's 6 of us. 3 of us went to Kamehameha. 2 went to Castle. 2 of my sisters went to Castle, and 1 went to Kaiser. I'm the only one left here in Hawaii. Yeah, Thanksgiving is sad, right? Holidays. But they couldn't afford to be here. My dad, who went to St. Louis, grew up in Kalihi. He died on the mainland. My mom died on the mainland too. And my 2 kids, I got 2 kids, and it scares me to death to think that they cannot afford to live here, right? Like, I sure hope they go to UH, man. 1, it's more affordable than the mainland, but 2, they'll be more likely to stay home. You know, I'm afraid I hear so many of my classmates and friends whose kids went away to school and they never come back because they can't afford to, you know, and that just scares me to death to think about that. Yeah. So I'm trying to take my kids to the beach as often as possible because that's what keeps me here. We talked about the ocean, right? I mean, I couldn't imagine living any place else in the entire world. You know, we live in the most beautiful place in the entire world. Kumuhina came to the city council and gave the message of aloha. And she said something that I'll never forget. She said she would die for Hawaii. Wow. Think about that. She would die for Hawaii and fight for Hawaii. You know, and I think that's awesome, right? That's what we need to believe that. And that's, you know, this fight for our vai. We go and die without the vai, right? But anyway, thank you guys. That was my closing comments. Just want to aloha each and every one of you. And check out our website, and you can email me if you have any follow-up questions. Be happy to talk story with you guys.
Mahalo nui. I want to mahalo everyone who's out there watching us on our live stream on Facebook. We've had so many comments, so many passionate comments. We've had kumus, we had community members. I know that one comment was from Kumu Kau'i Naniole. She was praising the work that Halau Kumana in St. Louis have been doing with the river. And one of the things that she mentioned in that comment was the Maka'ainana are the ones who are going to be doing the hard work, right? And so this is where it starts, right? With our ōpio and our ōpio getting involved. And I love how you shared a little bit of your story and how you got elected, because that's the pilina and the relationship building that really makes or breaks a politician. And so all of our ōpio, you may not think that people may be listening, but many people are listening. Another person that was on our Facebook live was Councilmember Rollins Fernandez. She's the vice chair of Maui City Council, and she's been listening and she's been providing some feedback on Facebook as well. So Ifit, actually, if you go to our Facebook live, she did throw some comments in there for you to read as well. So all of you folks, please go and check that out as well. Mahalo to our ōpio, and of course, a big warm mahalo to Chair Waters. Mahalo, Council Member, for being here with us.
Pleasure.
Kyla, Ifit, Lillian, Maui, and Hema, mahalo to you folks for sharing all of your mana'o and your well-spoken questions tonight. The future is looking bright if this is a sample of what's to come. And hopefully we get to do this again. I want to remind everyone who's listening out there that, you know, we did mention the schools that they come from, but the mana'o that was shared here tonight was theirs and theirs alone of these ōpio. It's not necessarily indicative of their institution. So if they said something that may have rubbed you the wrong way, never mind going to their schools. This is how we get the youth to go and get out there and share their opinions. So mahalo to all you folks out there. Mahalo to our ōpio and mahalo to our council member Waters for being here. And a big special mahalo to our sponsors as well, Kanaiokana and Kono, for putting this together. Follow them on social media as they will be announcing more events like this for weeks to come. And mahalo nui loa ya oko pakahia pau. You folks have a good evening. And remember, e ola mau ko olelo Hawaii, this mahina olelo Hawaii, and it is our kuleana. Vai is for all of us. So o amo i ke kuleana and po malie. Aloha nui.
Aloha.